What's up, Prep and Pan dudes? Peter from Panda here. Hey, I just picked these things up from UST. They're fire starters, but they're called WetFire, and I was just kind of curious about them because they are all-weather Tinder pack. This one comes in 8. You can get them in 6 or some other varieties too, but I've seen people light these things up, and supposedly even in complete wetness, you should be able to light it up. Now, I think that has to do with the material that it's made of and soaked in. All you have to do is you find a place to light it up. You open up the Tinder package, remove the WetFire cube, prepare WetFire by scraping the surface of the cube to create a small pile of shavings. And then I've seen people be able to use, a ferro rod to light it, or, obviously a match or something like that. And you also want to have other tinder because basically it's going to work like a wick. And the really small tinder that you can get that might be wet, hopefully the flame will last long enough that it'll kind of burn that up or dry it out so that it will catch fire. Now, this is really important because, when it's wet out, it is super hard to start a fire. It is super, super hard. And the thing about this is I think even though it can get wet, it should start a fire. So let's go ahead and just open this up and take a look at one. And then we'll give it a little try outside. So we've got our WetFire little packets in here, and they each come in kind of like, well, I don't know, peppermint-sized package here. It looks like 2 of them come together. You can just tear it apart. So you can have a few of these. I think when they're sealed up like this, it's no big deal. They're going to, be nice and water protected. So, like I said, they're kind of like mint-sized. And then if we open it up, now all of a sudden you're exposing it to the elements. Oh, and if it gets wet, now what do you do? Well, I think this thing, even when it's wet, even when you soak this thing in water, I think it will still light up. I can tell you right now it's pretty light, so it's not super, super dense, but it's, I don't know, it kind of feels like kind of the weight and size of, those big erasers that you had in grade school, of that same material. If it was this size, if it was the size of a large marshmallow, it's kind of flaking off a little bit, as you can see here, and it has kind of the feel of a candle, so it's definitely very waxy. It looks like you should be able to shave off stuff like this. So we'll shave some off. I think that'll light pretty quickly, but I'm also kind of curious if I put a flame right up to this, will it work just like a giant wick of a candle? Let's try it out. All right, guys, so outside here, have my board, and I think it's since it's called WetFire, I don't know that we need to test will it burn itself. The one I want to test here is will it burn after being thoroughly soaked in water. So there we go. Got it in there in some water, some agua, and to go ahead and kind of submerge it there. And that may not be totally practical, but if you take a dunk in a river or out rafting or end up falling in a creek or something like that, it's certainly possible that it doesn't get soaked. Even in light rains, you'll know from camping out in light rains that just over time, man, everything gets soaked, even if it's not really pouring down. So got it in there. I'm gonna pull it out here. Let's pour some water over it. We'll get the board a little wet here too. And I'm gonna go ahead and try to give it as good of a shot as possible. So get rid of the bulk of the water and just try to scrape it off. Well, gonna chop up a little piece of this, give us some surface area. All right, so there we have what looks like a cocaine bump. Let's just see if we can get this sucker to light. Man, look at that. Wet and everything. Good to go on a wet board. Now, of course, if you have a lot of wet material, you're going to want to take advantage of this and get it in that flame to dry off and get burning. The other thing is now, when we get a chunk of this stuff to light, does it light or does it really need to be cut up? Well, does not seem to want to light generally as a giant chunk. Oh, there we go. So there you have it. It will light as kind of its own thing. Does need to kind of be immersed in flame for a moment in order to catch a flame. But when you do that, I'm actually pretty impressed as to how big that flame gets. And even if let's say it's raining out and I'm throwing water there, I'm not submerging the capsule or the tablet by any means. but certainly being fairly liberal with water. So if it's sprinkling out here, and certainly kind of your general wet conditions, I think this is what you want to have in terms of starting a fire, because it seems to be pretty impervious to moisture. At least like honey badger, it don't give a shit. Let it burn, baby. Let it burn. So there it is, WetFire. I'm pretty impressed with it. I definitely would pack a few of these in either your emergency pack or your EDC or your camping gear. You know, you can probably won't need them every time, but to have a few of them on you will probably make a big difference when it's cold and damp. Peter from Panda. Out.